political parties as well as civil society organizations. We apologize for starting a little bit late. It was due to circumstances that were beyond our control. We shall proceed with a prayer which will be given to us by the President for the United National Independence Party, UNIP, that is Bishop Trevor Mwamba. Bishop, please.
Please let us stand. Say the prayer. Holy and eternal God, we come in your presence, giving thanks to you for the many blessings upon our lives, and indeed the blessing of our beautiful country. Be with us, inspire us with your Holy Spirit, that in all our doings we may do that which is pleasing in thy sight, and through the benefit of all your people in Zambia. We ask all this through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen. Thank you for that prayer, Bishop. So proceed to the introductions. My name is Sean Tembo. I'm the spokesperson for the Tonse Alliance, as well as the party president for the Patriots for Economic Progress. And I'm going to be your moderator this evening. I'll introduce the panel. I think I'll start from my right to the left. To the far right, we have President Sharagateka. She is the party president for the New Heritage Party, as well as a member of the United Kwacha Alliance. And next to her, we have President Savoy Imboera. She is the president of the NDC and also a member of the United Kwacha Alliance. And next to President Savoy Imboera, we have President Professor Dan Pule. He is the president of the Christian Democratic Party, as well as a member of the Tonse Alliance. Next to Professor Dan Pule, we have Honorable Given Robinda. He is the vice president for the Patriotic Front, as well as the acting president, because the president is not around. I forgot to mention that Professor Dan Pule is the vice chairman of the Tonse Alliance and the acting chairman, since the chairman is not around. And next to Honorable Given Robinda, we have Honorable Ernest Mansa, who is the acting president for the Zambia We Want. The Zambia We Want is a political party in Zambia, which was recently registered. I'm sure you are all aware of it. And next to Honorable Mansa is Honorable Sakwiwa Skota, who is the president for the United Liberal Party, ULP, and also the chairman for the United Kwacha Alliance, UKA. And next to Honorable Sakwiwa Skota, we have President Fred Membe. President Membe is the president for the Socialist Party. And next to President Fred Membe, we have Bishop Trevor Mwamba. Bishop Trevor Mwamba is the president of the United National Independence Party, or UNIP. And next to Bishop Mwamba, we have Honorable Brebna Changala. Honorable Brebna Changala comes from OSIDA and is a civil society leader. I'm sure you are all familiar with him. And behind the front row, we have President Jobu. President Jobu, you need to. Sorry? Yes, he comes from the Eco Forum. And next to Honorable Jobu, we have Honorable Muhabi Rungu. He comes from the Zambia We Want, together with Honorable Ernest Mansa. And next to Mr. Lungu, we have Madam Exilda Mwenya. Madam Exilda Mwenya is a president for New Era Democratic Party and a member of the Tonse Alliance. And next to Madam Mwenya, we have Honorable Sylvia Charikosa, who is a member of the Council of Leaders of the Tonse Alliance and coming from the Patriotic Front. And next to Honorable Sylvia Charikosa, we have Mr. Piri Zulu. Yeah. Mr. Zulu, he comes from the civil society organizations. So basically, that's our team this evening. I'll proceed to outline how this joint press briefing is going to be conducted. So the background to this joint press briefing is that us as opposition political party leaders, as well as civil society leaders, identified the need for us to address the nation on a very pertinent issue. It is just a single issue, and that issue is the issue of the discrepancies at the Zambia Statistical Office, or ZAMSTATS. We felt that that issue was a very big issue, and it could not be addressed by any single political party alone or any single alliance alone. So we felt the need to come together and address this issue collectively. Our chairman, as Tonse Alliance, who is His Excellency Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu, who is out of the country at the moment in South Africa, decided to instruct us as Tonse Alliance to reach out to our brothers and sisters in the opposition with a view of us being able to come together and conduct this joint press briefing. And I think we are happy, all of us are happy here, that within a very short period of time, we were able to come together and agree on a theme of how we are going to address this issue of the Zambia Statistical Office discrepancies. The structure of our press briefing this evening is going to be that we have a joint statement which we have all signed and which we are going to share with the media at the end of it all. This is a joint statement, and this joint statement, there are portions of this joint statement that are going to be led by each one of the 7 individuals who are on the high table. And then from there, we are going to proceed to take questions from you, the media, and after that, we are going to conclude this joint press briefing. So, countrymen and women, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to now call upon the first person who is going to proceed to issue part of the joint statement to the country and to you members of the media in particular. So, countrymen and women, ladies and gentlemen of the media, I now wish to proceed to call upon Honorable Sakwiba Sikota, State Council, who is the President of the United Liberal Party, as well as Chairman of the United Kwacha Alliance, to issue the first part of the joint statement. Honorable Sakwiba.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, members of the press. Excuse me. The master of ceremony is trying to to sabotage me, taking away my speech. Fellow leaders and the people of Zambia. First of all, I would like to thank my colleagues, the political leaders who decided that for this particular matter, I would be the chair of this grouping. So thank you to you all. Also, I want to thank all the leaders who have come through. This was an effort made by each and every one of us. I do recall that once the idea was floated, there was a need to get buy-in from the various people. So, for example, I had to contact President Fred Membe and had the discussions with him, and we saw that he bought in. And so I managed to get him to agree to be part of this. The other person who then I had the task of bringing in and managed to is President Bishop Mwamba. We had discussions and saw that this is indeed a very important matter that needs to be done. Then we also had the Zambia we want, and I took time to have several sessions with my colleague, Mr. Mohavi Lungu, and we had several sessions, not because he needed convincing, but because we were discussing so many of these important issues that were needed in this matter. And we found that Tonse were also of a similar view. So that is how we managed to come together. It was that various people were actually thinking of the same thing. And I must say that I played quite a big role in bringing in those people that I have mentioned. Yes. So, as stated by the Master of Ceremony, this extraordinary press conference called by the opposition, political parties, civil society organizations, and who are all represented here, is something which this country needs to listen to very, very attentively. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue that has brought us together with these other organizations, is the unfolding crisis surrounding the government's reaction to the dissemination of the 2022 census findings. The press, as well as social media, has over the past week reported about the negative, threatening, and outright panicky reaction of the UPND government to the dissemination of the findings of the 2022 census of population and housing. That was concluded between 18th August and 21st September 2022. It is standard practice to release a summary report of the main census report after completion of data cleaning and analysis. It was therefore commendable and nothing unusual that the Zambia Statistics Agency, ZAMSTAT, released and presented the summary report of the 2022 Census of Population and Housing at Mulunguchi International Conference Center on Tuesday last week. What was not standard, however, was what happened on the day. It has never happened in Zambia. There is one politician in Zambia who likes saying, for the first time in Zambia's history. And indeed, for the first time in Zambia's history, during the presentation of the summary report, a dispute erupted between senior officials of Zamstats and the Ministry of Finance. This dispute was on the one hand, and on the one hand, the Ministry of Finance, and on the other, the chairperson of the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission chairperson being Dr. Chorwe Beani. According to the press reports, and you, the press, are the ones who told us this, so I'm sure you'll be able to confirm. And other witnesses who attended the dissemination of the census report, Dr. Beani, a trained historian, disputed the census findings and questioned why Zamstats was in a hurry to release, according to him, in a hurry, to release the census data. He went as far as scolding the Zamstats leaders, reserving his strongest rebuke for the board chairperson, Mr. Oliver Chinganya, who, until his government appointment, was the director of the Africa Center for Statistics and chief statistician at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA. I have stated that this was the first time in Zambia's history that this had happened. Maybe at this stage, let me ask my colleague to tell us what is the history in terms of Zambia's statistics.
Thank you very much, Honorable Scotta, State Council. Allow me to ride on the protocols already observed by those who have come before me. And I just need to say the following. Firstly, as has been alluded to, it is the first time in the history of this country that government leaders are discrediting a census report conducted by the same government, by the same administration. The first time in our history. The issue at hand, ladies and gentlemen, is immense. It is disruptive and has the potential to fatally undermine the integrity of the 2022 census. It is worth noting that this particular census is not the first one. In fact, it's the 60th since our independence in 1964. 1969, we had a census. 1980, we had another census. 1990, another census. 2000, yet another census, and 2010. So we're not going through this for the first time. It's happened before. But as we have said, it is the first time in the history of our country that government leaders themselves dispute the document they produce. I want to say this, that accurate census data is essential to understanding the different populations in different parts of our country, the social and living conditions of the citizens of this country, the changing patterns of rural and urban movements, planning and adequate provision of social services such as housing, education, water, electricity, and health. Such data is also critical to understanding the demographics of the country, including age, gender, and income, as well as the number of people who qualify to register as voters in each area. It's extremely important, therefore, that census is not undermined by those who produce it. It is the basis for so many things that we do as a country. A census, therefore, has a significant bearing on both general, it has a significant importance and bearing on both the general as well as occasional elections. And this is a fundamental issue that will be discussed at a later date. Like previous efforts, the 2022 census was a product of a huge collaborative effort of multidisciplinary teams. It is in the light of the importance of the census data to national planning and the concerning developments around the 2022 census report that we demand clear answers on 3 issues that will be highlighted shortly by my colleague. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Lesalungwe. Lesalungwe. Oh, lesalungwe. Oh, lesalungwe. Oh, lesalungwe. Oh, lesalungwe. Now, thank you, my colleagues. As has been stated, my role now is to present the next part of our statement as collaborative gathering today of political parties and civil society. The part I'm going to read is the release of the report to State House. During the launch of the summary report at Mulungushi International Conference Center, which you are aware of, members of the press, the chairperson of the Civil Service Commission, Dr. Cholwe Beyani, disclosed that the report was first presented to the President of Zambia and the Civil Service Commission during a meeting held at State House on an undisclosed date. Dr. Beyani also stated that during this meeting, the President Hakainde Hichilema, expressed dissatisfaction with the report, alleging that the report had serious anomalies that needed correction, according to Dr. Beyani. According to Dr. Beyani, the President directed the ZAMSTAT's board to not proceed with the planned launch of the summary report until such a time when the alleged anomalies would have been corrected. Arising from these revelations and in the spirit of transparency, a constitutional value and principle, we demand the following questions. And my colleague is coming to read from this point to ask the questions. Let me say to you that first of all, the ZAMSTAT has its own board to which it should have presented the summary report instead of State House. Further, from my experience, having worked for many years as Deputy Minister of Finance, at that time the Central Statistics were carrying out this task. The report was always presented to the Minister of Finance and not to the President of Zambia. We know now Zamstat is a quasi government authority. It has its own board. The chairman, therefore, should have presented this report to the board and not to the president. The questions will be asked. Ambassador Sylvia Charikos.
Thank you very much. The questions that this grouping is demanding answers to are the following. 1. Why was the Census of Population and Housing Summary Report first given to President Hichilema and the Civil Service Commission, when, according to the law, the Zamstats agency, which falls under the Ministry of Finance, is only answerable to its board of directors? 2. When was the State House meeting between President Hichilema, Dr. Bayani, and the Zamstats board held? No offense intended. 3. Who asked for this State House meeting and why? 4. What criteria was used to identify and invite attendees to this meeting? 5. Can State House publish or furnish the public with the official record and minutes of the meeting, including the full list of participants who attended it, the directives that President Hichilema issued to Zamstats in the meeting, and the source of authority for issuing such directives? 6. Why was the State House meeting at which this summary report was discussed a closed-door event, hidden from the media and the wider public? 7. How many other meetings between the named parties have been held since the conclusion of the report, and why? Who attended such meetings? How were they identified? And are there records of the same? Thank you.
Good evening, fellow citizens. The absence of critical information, such as ethnic composition and predominant language, is always part of the census report. The document that was launched on the 5th of February 2025 was dubbed as a revised summary of the whole report. A summary is just that. It's a summary. A brief account of the main points of something whole. When we read the summary report, we noted the glaring absence of critical information in the form of the widely used languages in this country, widely used languages, and the ethnic composition of the Zambian society. I hope you get me. Previous census reports, including the most recent one in 2010, contain data on widely used languages of communication and ethnicity. Ethnicity, I must say here, is very sensitive to this administration. So don't be surprised if it's a seditious charge will emanate from this one. The 2010 contain data on widely used languages of communication and ethnicity, presented by sex, rural or urban, province, and census each year. Of course, the previous reports have made it clear that the predominant language of communications looks at languages use, and that the number of language users does not necessarily reflect the number of people that belong to that ethnic grouping. None of this vital information is to be found in the summary report. This summary report, arising from this glaring omission and in the spirit of transparency, a constitutional value and principle, we demand answers to the following questions. And the questions will be asked by a colleague of mine. Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. Okay. My name's Zulu Thomas, senior official from the Gen Z movement and also the civil society. Those are the ones I'm representing, and also tied in with my colleagues here for the same vision. I actually even recognize eminent people behind me. It's nice to have chance given to address you in their midst. Now, from the presentation done, it brings out the questions. From the presentation done by the previous speaker, it brings out questions. And these are the following questions. What version of the report was presented at the State House meeting? The original or the revised? And why? What version of the report was presented at the State House meeting? The original or the revised? And there's a question there, why? Why? Zambians need answers. And we are speaking on behalf of Zambians. The second question is, what information in the original report has been changed in the latest version to warrant the use of the word revised report? This is key, this is critical. The third question is, given that what was launched on 25th February 2025 is a summary of the whole report, why doesn't the 2022 census of population and housing summary report contain data on language, youth, and ethnicity? The fourth one, assuming that this information would be released separately, how was it decided that it should be left out of the summary report? This is a big question which we need answers. Who decided this and why? The fifth question, I'll be loud, I think you can still get me. The fifth question is, when exactly would this information on ethnic composition and language use be made publicly available to the citizens of Zambia and all stakeholders? The last and sixth question is, what other critical information, if any, was omitted from the summary report? Why was it left out? And when will this same information be produced? So these are serious questions that we need answers from. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to say that in 2000, just when I completed school, a few years after I completed school, I was one of the people that was employed as an enumerator in the 2000 census. And in 2007, I was a supervisor. So I'm one person that has walked the streets of Lusaka to do a census. So I'm one of the people who's horrified to see what happened. And therefore, I go ahead with a speech, my part of the speech, which is the uncalled for attacks on Zamstats by the UPND, because it has really, really horrified all of us. During the launch of the 2022 Census of Population and Housing Summary Report, Dr. Bayan launched an astonishing attack on the report, describing it as illegal and therefore null and void after all the work put in by the people. The chairperson of the Civil Service Commission disputed the figures in the census report, contending that the statistics pertaining to 15 wards in Southern Province were false because they did not tally with the records of registered voters contained in the voters' roll produced by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ. Very, very shocking. Dr. Bayani disclosed that one of the directives that President Hakainde Hichilema made to Zamstats during the private meeting at State House was a correction of this alleged anomaly. Based on their failure to do so, Dr. Bayani reprimanded the Zamstats officials for proceeding to launch the report against the directive of President Hichilema. Very unprecedented, and like everybody else has said, for the first time happening in the history of the country. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I am going to write on, okay, thank you, hello. Yeah, I am going to write on the protocols that have already been set. From the foregoing presentation and arising from these developments and in the spirit of transparency, and by the way, transparency is a constitutional value and principle, we demand answers to the following questions. Number one, can the government confirm the capacity in which Dr. Bayani attended the launch of the census report at Mulungushi International Conference Center? Is it in his capacity as chairperson of the civil service? I'll speak loudly like everyone else. I think this microphone is giving a problem. In his capacity as chairperson of the Civil Service Commission or as director of research of the UPND? Number two, can the government confirm that the voters' roll that Dr. Bayani was referring to is the one that was used for the 2021 elections? Number three, can the government confirm that 3 Zamstats directors, namely Mlenga Musepa, Chola Nakazwe, and Goodson Sinyenga, were dismissed from the agency last year? Number four, if confirmed, can the government furnish the public the reasons that it gave for the dismissal of the trio? Number five, can the government confirm or deny reports that it previously blocked the launch of the summary report, including in December 2024? Number six, can the government name the 15 wards in Southern Province that are said to have more voters than the people who were counted? This is very, very key. Please pay attention to this. Number seven, can the government explain the correlation between the number of registered voters and those appearing in the census report in the said wards? Number eight, How were these people identified as belonging to 15 different wards in Southern Province when the census report does not contain names of wards nor those of the people who were counted? Number 9, can the government confirm that there were no other anomalies that it found in the 2022 census report except those pertaining to Southern Province? If so, how was this outcome determined? And by the way, was any other province apart from Southern Province affected? Thank you.
Good evening, esteemed Zambians. So I carry on from where my colleague left off by stating that free and fair elections form the heartbeat of any truly democratic process and should be secretly guarded to prevent fraud or abuse. On the face of it, this matter requires investigation. This must be undertaken impartially and should be in the interests of all stakeholders, not least the citizens of Zambia, to determine the true position on this matter. We therefore call for an independent investigation to be undertaken by a team of experts made up of or appointed on behalf of representatives of civil society, political parties, and representatives of the church mother body. Now, the concerns raised regarding the census report are a tip of the iceberg of a more fundamental problem that we as Zambians need to address urgently. This fundamental problem is simply the abandonment or collapse of moral values in our country. Critical government agencies, such as the Zambia Statistics Agency, which feeds the Ministry of Finance, Budgeting and Planning Department, as well as the delimitation of constituencies and wards and polling stations. That is the whole electoral process are vital in ensuring the smooth running of these institutions. In order to maintain confidence in our electoral and governance system, it is important that there is no political manipulation. Good governance is non-negotiable. Therefore, integrity, transparency, and accountability should be the fulcrum to sustain the peace and unity we have lived to cherish since independence. God bless you all.
The concerns we raise in this statement are very serious. When State Council Sakuiba Skota approached me I accepted the request or the invitation to this project without hesitation because it was serious and urgent. The answers that we are seeking from the government have the potential to build or erode public trust and to seriously affect the integrity or credibility of next year's general election. We therefore implore this government to adequately respond to the questions we have posed here with sobriety and seriousness. Latila uko alinsoke, opa alinsoke, tapafugire abantu. We do not want to see Zambia burning come next year, owing to potentially manipulated census and electoral data. One way of preventing such a possibility is for the government to show transparency in the conduct and engagements with the citizens of this country. Ubuchenje shibumo chimono kupusa. Batila uchenje shiwanko kupungwa ta tasakamana na totera mkwa.
Thank you very much to all the speakers who have spoken on this very important topic. As all the speakers have highlighted, you have a sequence of events starting from the time that the chairman of the Civil Service Commission, Dr. Chorwe Bean, publicly challenged a report from a federal government department, being the Zambia Statistical Office. And the background to that was that there were a series of meetings which this government department had with the Civil Service Commission, and we are told even the president. And it appears that despite those meetings, the Zambia Statistical Agency still stood to their position on the preliminary report. So from our standpoint, it appears that the Zambia Statistical Agency is one of the few government departments that have a backbone to stand up to their professionalism. In that regard, can we all please give them a big hand? Thank you. Thank you. Before I proceed to questions from you, members of the media, I wish to recognize the presence of certain important delegates, starting from the president for the Reform for Development Party, who is also a member of UCA, President Robert Chansa. Mr. President, sir. I also wish to recognize the presence of the chairperson of the Legal Affairs Committee for the Tonse Alliance, as well as the Patriotic Front, Honorable Sanga George, as well as various senior party leaders from various political parties, including the Citizens First Party. I'm told the President Hari Kalawa couldn't be with us today because he's currently in the Eastern Province of Zambia. We appreciate the support that he has given this joint press briefing by sending senior leaders of his party. Thank you. At this point, we shall proceed So we shall now proceed to the next phase of our meeting, which is taking questions from yourselves as members of the media. I must mention that the questions are going to be restricted to what has actually been said by the speakers so far. We are not going to digress to other matters. We are fully aware of the fact that there are several issues that require to be addressed, and that when you members of the press have an opportunity to interact with political leaders, you always have things itching on your mind to ask. But our request is that you shelf that so that we focus on the issues that have so far been deliberated upon. Can we have the first question, if any, please? Yes, sir. Can you give us your full name and the political, the media house, where you're coming from? Yes.
All right. My name is Thomas. I'm from Senator TV. My question is bordering on the last part that Dr. President has touched on, especially in line with the anomalies that have been identified, having the potential to threaten the 2026 general elections. I might want to direct the question to Honorable Given Lumenda. Obviously, Dr. Lumenda can pick it up, or any possible addition. In that the preliminary part of the statement that has been made touches on the 2021 general elections. I might want to appreciate the authenticity that the 2021 general elections, from the issues that have been highlighted here, pose in relation to the statistics that have been presented. And this also Dr. Membe can touch on, since he says if these questions are left unattended to, they have the potential to threaten the outcome of the 2026 general elections. Thank you.
I think the way we are going to proceed is that we are going to be responding to each question asked so that we don't forget what the question was, and then we proceed to the next question. And in this regard, I'll call upon the chair to basically respond to that question in terms of allocating it to the appropriate person who is going to proceed to answer it.
Thomas, thank you very much for your question. The reason why it's been stated that the questions will be addressed to this joint panel is because we have already decided as to who will be taking up which particular topic. And we have discussed it amongst ourselves, and we know what the position is of each one of us and what the answers will be. And as was being stated by the Master of Ceremonies, that is why we even said that all the questions should be those arising from what has been presented in this press conference. With regards to the question that has been raised by Thomas, in fact, perhaps at this stage I should embarrass one or two people. I'll embarrass Dr. Fred Mende, I'll embarrass Dr. Musumali, I'll embarrass Mr. Mohali Lungu, in that they were the core resource persons who put together this which we have presented. That is from Dr. Fred Mende from Socialist Party and Mr. Mohavi Lungu from the Zambia We Want. So all of us are very grateful that they did all this hard work there. The reason I'm saying that is because I think that it is right that Dr. Fred Mende answered that particular question as he did all that background work.
Elections are very important. They are extremely important in maintaining stability, in maintaining peace in any society. And our society, our country, our nation is not an exception. Elections are based on data, on statistics. And if there are disputes, if there's no transparency in the way statistics are put up, on which elections are based, there's bound to be trouble. We have seen trouble flare up in many parts of our continent. We have a problem in our neighboring country, a country of our origin, for most of us, the DRC. The DRC is on fire today, partly because of inability to hold elections that are acceptable by all the participants. We don't want that to happen to our country. We have been peaceful. There has been stability in our country because we have held elections that are based primarily on data that is respected and acceptable in the main to all the participants. The previous governments did not do that much to manipulate the data on which elections are based. And the data that the Zambia Statistical Agency produces is not also only for elections. It is also for resource allocation countrywide. If you inflate figures for certain regions, for certain areas, it will mean more resources will need to be allocated to those areas than it should have been if the correct figures were applied. And it distorts national planning. It affects national development. We saw what used to happen in Nigeria, in the federal states of Nigeria, where figures were inflated because those figures of populations went with the social allocations. The more numbers you have in your state, the more you receive from the federal government. And we have seen problems that are there in Nigeria. We don't want that to happen. And also statistics that come from our ZAMSTATs are not only for Zambia, they are for global use. That's why there are so many institutions that fund that process. From UN agencies, USAID, this time even private institutions, private banks helped to fund that exercise. It is important that there's integrity, there's transparency in the figures we get from there. If we don't, so many things become distorted. Economic development, economic resource allocation becomes distorted, and the politics becomes distorted. The elections become distorted. And you know what happens when elections are distorted. I don't need to go much into disquisition about that.
Thank you, President Mende, for that. So we're going to proceed. I hope your question has been fully answered. Are you happy? You're not smiling. Oh, Honorable. Yes. Honorable, wanted it appears. Please give us what you have in mind.
Thank you. Thomas, censuses across the world follow internationally set protocols. And when a census report is disputed, it declares it useless because nobody can respect a report that has been disputed. And as you have heard, the census is a very important instrument by which people govern themselves, especially just 1 year before elections. And one matter that must worry Zambians is the proximity of the release of the 2022 summary census report and the release of the voters register. Is this a pure coincidence? Now, you also asked another question. Doesn't this bring into question the integrity and credibility of the 2021 election results? If we're being told that Bayani is very unhappy with that report because it reveals the fact that in some 15 wards, there were more registered voters than the total population in those wards. What does that mean about the election results in those 15 wards and by extension across the country? Add to that the fact that all of you citizens have watched the video of people stuffing ballot boxes in the same area where those 15 wards are. Is this a coincidence? No. And make no mistake, this is evidence of the fact that elections are capable of being rigged, not only by those in government, but also those in the opposition. And this is testimony of that fact. I'd like to conclude by saying, why has Hakainde all of a sudden started talking about delimitation of constituencies? Why now? Why after that disputed census report? Which areas is he focusing on for delimitation? Is it any wonder that prior to the 2021 elections, Hakainde was against delimitation? He himself argued directly and through his members of parliament that we needed the census before considering delimitation of constituencies. Are we now going to allow that an obviously manipulated census report should be the one that informs the delimitation of constituencies in readiness for 2026? If Zambians are going to have the right to determine their leaders, they must demand that they are given the right statistics about the population, failure of which the elections of 2026 can as well be declared a farce. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Olinga, for that detailed submission. Are you happy now? Yes. Very good. We shall proceed to other questions. Are there other members of the media who have questions? Questions? Can you stand up, please?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My question is simple.
Can you say your name and the organization?
I'm identified as
Jaga Edwin.
Yes, sir.
And you come from?
Yes.
Okay.
What happens if government does not respond?
Thank you for that question. It's a very pertinent question, and I must mention that I'll answer it with the permission of Chair. I'll answer it. Okay, Chair wants to answer.
That is a very, very important question. And that is the reason why, in fact, I insisted that I would be the one to answer it, because it has various repercussions, and it's something which is extremely serious. This whole press conference, I think, is one of the most important issues we have running up to the next elections that we're going to have. This is not going to be just a one-off thing that we do, where we just come out here, we just speak to the people, and we have no follow-ups that we do. You have noticed that during our presentation, we have asked that the government should answer certain questions, very detailed and pointed questions that we put forward. There's various sets of them. And those questions are things that all of you, I'm sure, want answers to. Now, the answers that we get to those are going to impact in terms of the kind of action that we're going to take coming from now. If there is no response at all, even that is going to impact in terms of now what is the next actions we're going to take. We're giving them an opportunity to come clean. If they run away from that, we will certainly come up with further action, because we want to see this to its logical conclusion. There are various options that we do have. We've got options of going to courts, asking for orders of mandamus. We've got options of going to do civil disobedience. We've got options. We've got options which are manifold in terms of what we can do. So in terms of what we're to do, just be happy in the knowledge that we have got so many things. Some of the things I have not even touched upon. And we are going to see this to its conclusion. Next question. Yes, back there.
Not from the media house. My name is Robert.
We should restrict it to media.
I just want to add on what this previous question asked. I think the biggest problem that we've had in opposition is that we are too fragmented. We want to be there, and it's
What is your question? Go straight. No, not coming to it. We've got very limited time, and so I'll ask you to go straight to the question. More especially, seeing that you are not from a media house. It was just simply out of courtesy that you had already been called to come. So if you're not going to go directly now to your question, then please sit down.
I'm sorry, sir. I think the rules are that we are not taking questions from non-media houses. So you may sit down. Thank you. Sure. Are there any other questions from media houses? Which media house are you from?
Good evening.
Your name is?
My name is Kennedy. I'm from KBNT. It's for the first time that we've seen this level of togetherness from the opposition and civil society, perhaps only because it touches on a matter that concerns all of you and the nation. Could this be the beginning of you working together? The concern has been that you have perhaps less than 15 months to the next election. Now you have issues to do with data and courts and all of that to work through. How are you going to sustain the momentum of working together as you have demonstrated this evening? Thank you.
Let's give it to me. Thank you very much for that question. It is a very interesting and important question, but as you will note, it is not touching on what this press conference was about. We undertake, if you're going to give us space on KBN to come and discuss that particular issue. But for now, as was stated earlier, we are restricting ourselves to questions arising from what we have spoken about.
Thank you, Chair, for that submission. Is there anyone else who is itching to ask a question? I think we are happy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. On behalf of all the delegates who have been present here today, starting from Madam Sharakateka, the president of the New Heritage Party, who is also